The moving truck blocked half the narrow suburban street, and the November sun struck its metal side hard enough to blind anyone who looked too long. Daniel Holt had been standing on his porch, coffee cooling in his hand, reviewing a contractor estimate when the sound of a child's laughter pulled his attention to the house next door. He looked up, only to see a woman lift a box from the truck, her hair catching the light in the exact same way it used to when she leaned over him in the mornings. For a split second, his mind refused to believe what his eyes confirmed. "Mia," he said before he could stop himself. The name hit the air like it had been waiting years to be spoken again. Her head jerked up. The box slipped from her arms, landing on the pavement with a soft thud. She froze, every muscle in her body seizing, and when she turned fully toward him, her face drained of color. It was her. The woman who had walked out of his life 6 years ago without a note or an explanation. The woman he had tried to forget and never could. "Daniel," she whispered, barely audible. "Then, I didn't know you lived here," he didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was already caught on the child standing beside her. Small, maybe 5 or 6, with a tangle of light brown hair and a grin so familiar it made Daniel's heart lurch painfully against his ribs. The boy looked up at him, curious but unafraid, holding a toy airplane. When he smiled, one corner of his mouth lifted higher than the other, the exact way Daniel's had since childhood. Something cold and wild moved through him. He stepped off his porch slowly, the wood creaking beneath his boots. "You're moving in next door?" Mia nodded, her voice strained. "Yeah, it was the only rental available this late in the year." He wanted to laugh. Of course it was. The universe had a dark sense of humor. She reached for the box she'd dropped, but he got there first, crouching to pick it up. Their hands brushed. The contact was small, accidental, but it detonated something in both of them. Her breath hitched. His pulse stumbled. He handed it to her, his tone flat. "Let me guess. Back in town for a fresh start." Her eyes flicked to the boy, then back to him. "Something like that." The child tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, can I go see the backyard? Mom." The word nearly knocked the breath from Daniel's chest. She smiled down at the boy, soft and protective. "Stay where I can see you, okay?" When the child ran toward the gate, Daniel's throat tightened. "Mom." He swallowed hard. "You got married?" Her eyes darted away. "No." He waited, but she didn't elaborate. The silence pressed in between them. Cars passed on the street, the sound of tires on asphalt oddly distant. Finally he spoke, voice low and rough. "So you just left, disappeared, and now you're back, with a kid?" Mia flinched like he'd struck her. "You don't understand, Daniel." "You're right," he said. "I don't." For a moment she looked like she might cry, but she didn't. The same quiet strength that had once drawn him to her flickered in her eyes. "I didn't come here to make things harder. I didn't even know you lived here." That part he believed. She'd never been capable of calculated cruelty. She'd always been the kind who'd rather break her own heart than someone else's. Still, the betrayal hadn't faded. Not after 6 years of wondering what he'd done wrong, what lie he'd missed, what moment he could have stopped her from leaving. He shoved a hand through his hair, forcing composure. "Welcome to Maplewood, Mia. It's a quiet neighborhood. People mind their business." "Good," she murmured, eyes down. He turned back toward his house, the sound of the boy's laughter following him like a ghost. That night, he couldn't stop hearing it, the small, high-pitched giggle echoing through the backyard fence. He'd tried to focus on his architectural drafts, on the renovation schedule for his client downtown, but his mind kept circling back. Her voice, her face, the kid's smile. He'd buried all of it years ago under work, whiskey and a rotation of meaningless dates. Yet one afternoon on his front lawn, and every buried feeling clawed its way back. He shut his laptop and leaned back in his chair. The memory came unbidden. Flashback. 6 years ago. The air had smelled like wet grass that night. They'd been sitting on the hood of his car outside the county fairgrounds, her head on his shoulder. She'd told him she was scared of how much she loved him. He'd laughed and said love wasn't supposed to be safe. She'd looked up, smiling through the dark. "Then promise me you won't let go when it gets hard." He'd promised. And then one morning, she was gone. A knock on the door snapped him back. He opened it to find Mia standing there, hands clasped tightly in front of her, an uncertain look in her eyes. The boy stood half hidden behind her legs. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said quietly. "The lights in the kitchen went out and the landlord isn't answering." He could have said no. Should've, but he stepped aside instead. "Come in." She hesitated, then entered, the boy clutching a small stuffed bear. Daniel reached for a flashlight from the drawer and followed her next door. Her kitchen was half unpacked, boxes stacked along the wall. The smell of fresh paint lingered in the air. He found the circuit panel and flipped the tripped breaker. The lights blinked back on. "Thank you," she said. The boy's voice broke the quiet. "Mom, can I show him my plane?" Mia opened her mouth to refuse, but Daniel forced a smile. "Sure, kid." The child ran to the living room, holding up the toy proudly. "It's a Cessna. My mom says my dad used to fly one too." Daniel froze. Slowly, he looked at Mia. Her face went pale. The child looked between them, confused. "Mom?" She crouched, her hands trembling as she smoothed the boy's hair. "Ethan, why don't you go draw me something at the table?" When he scampered off, Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper that cut through the air. "He looks just like me." Mia closed her eyes. "Daniel, please. How old is he?" She didn't answer. He stepped closer, fury and heartbreak colliding in his chest. "How old?" Her voice broke. 5. The number hit him like a physical blow. His mind did the math automatically. 5 years. Which meant conceived right before she left. He took a step back, shaking his head as if the motion could erase the truth. "You left town pregnant." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I wanted to tell you, I did. But you don't know what was happening then. Your father, the firm, everything." "They said they?" His voice sharpened. "Who the hell are they?" She pressed a hand to her mouth, as if the words she wanted to say might destroy everything left standing between them. Daniel turned away, gripping the edge of the counter until his knuckles whitened. The child's humming from the table filled the silence like an accusation. He forced himself to look at her. "You kept my son from me." Her voice trembled. "I kept him safe. From me? From what your family would have done," she whispered. The words sliced through him. He didn't even know what she meant yet, but the fear in her eyes was real. He looked again toward the boy drawing with bright crayons, oblivious to the storm unraveling around him. The resemblance was undeniable. The same focused look, the same crooked smile. The truth settled heavy in Daniel's chest, final and irrevocable. He turned back to Mia, voice hoarse. "He's mine." She didn't speak, didn't move, just met his eyes with silent confirmation. And in that moment, the past 6 years collapsed into one jagged realization. Every night he'd spent wondering, every unanswered question, every wound that hadn't healed, had all led here. To this. To the woman who'd broken his heart standing in his kitchen. To the little boy at the table, coloring airplanes with his smile. Daniel drew a slow breath that sounded too much like a sob. "What the hell did they tell you, Mia?" Her lips parted, eyes glistening. "Enough to make me run." He stared at her, everything inside him unraveling. "Then you'd better start talking," he said quietly. His voice steady only because it couldn't afford to break. And for the first time since she left, she looked up at him, not like an enemy or a ghost, but like a woman who had been carrying the same unbearable secret all these years. The light flickered once overhead. The boy looked up, smiling brightly, unaware that his father had just found him. Daniel didn't sleep that night. The revelation pressed against his chest like weight he couldn't breathe under. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the boy's face, the way he smiled up from that kitchen table, his son, drawing blue lines across paper without knowing he'd changed everything. By morning, he'd decided one thing. Silence wasn't an option anymore. He walked across the dewy grass to her porch just as the sun broke through the trees. She opened the door wearing a faded gray sweatshirt, hair still damp from a shower. She looked startled to see him, but not surprised. "We need to talk," he said. She nodded, stepping aside. "Ethan's still asleep." He followed her inside, the scent of coffee and cardboard mixing with that familiar trace of vanilla she'd always worn. It hit him in the gut, how easily her presence still got under his skin. "I'm not letting this go," he said flatly. "You had my son. You hid him from me. You don't get to decide I'm not part of his life." Her voice was soft, but steady. "I never wanted to cut you out. I wanted to protect him." "From what?" "From me. From the people around you." Her gaze flicked up, meeting his. "Your father made it clear what would happen if I stayed." Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" She exhaled, shoulders sagging. "He came to see me, Daniel. The week before I left, he told me you were about to take over the firm, that you couldn't afford a scandal. He said if I didn't disappear quietly, he'd destroy my family, get my dad fired, ruin us financially." I believed him. He stared at her, disbelief fading into something darker. "My father did that? You know what he was like. I was 26. I panicked." Daniel turned away, pressing a hand to the back of his neck. His father had been ruthless in business, but this was a new level of cruelty. "You should have told me," I tried. "He had me followed, Daniel. I thought if you knew, he'd go after you too. I left so you could have the life you were building. The anger he'd carried for years twisted into something else. Grief, confusion, regret. I spent 6 years thinking you didn't love me anymore." Her voice broke. I never stopped. The words hung between them, heavy and impossible. From the hallway, a sleepy voice interrupted. "Mom?" Ethan appeared, rubbing his eyes, his hair sticking up in every direction. He looked at Daniel curiously. "You're here again." Daniel forced a smile. "Yeah, good morning, buddy." Mia's tone softened. "Say hi to Mr. Holt, Ethan." "Hi," the boy said, then added proudly, "We were going to go to the park today." Daniel met Mia's eyes. "Mind if I come along?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. He'd like that. The park sat a few blocks away, quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. Ethan ran ahead toward the swings, shouting for them to watch. Daniel followed behind with Mia, the silence between them no longer sharp, just fragile. "Does he know anything?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "He's asked, but I told him his dad wasn't around anymore. I couldn't risk him wondering." He nodded, watching the boy pump his legs to gain height on the swing. "He deserves the truth, I know. I just need time." He looked at her then, really looked. The strain around her eyes, the exhaustion she carried like second skin. She'd done everything alone without him. Pride and guilt wrestled in his chest. When Ethan called for help on the monkey bars, Daniel jogged over, steadying him by the waist. "Got you," he said, lifting him higher. The boy laughed, clutching the bar tight. "You're strong," Daniel grinned. "So are you." For a second, he saw the resemblance not just in the face, but in the way the kid approached the world. Bold, curious, completely unguarded. It made something inside him ache with both wonder and loss. When they left the park, Ethan chattered the whole way home. By the time they reached the house, Daniel had agreed to come by the next afternoon to help hang shelves in his room. The next few days blurred into a cautious rhythm. Daniel stopped by after work. They cooked dinner together, built a small table for Ethan's drawings, even fixed the leaky sink. The boy adored him instantly, tugging at his sleeve, asking endless questions. Mia watched from the kitchen doorway, her eyes betraying every emotion she tried to hide. Relief, sadness, longing. One evening, after Ethan fell asleep on the couch, Daniel leaned against the counter, sipping coffee. "You're doing a good job with him." She smiled faintly. "He makes it easy." "You've done all this alone." Her shoulders lifted. "You learn fast when you have no choice." He set the mug down, staring at the floor. "I hate that you thought you couldn't trust me." "I didn't think I couldn't," she said. "I thought I shouldn't." He looked up. "There's a difference?" "Yes," her gaze steadied. "You would have fought for us, and your father would have crushed you for it." Daniel's voice was rough. "Then I should have been crushed." She blinked hard, her composure cracking. "You don't mean that." "I do." The silence after that was full of things neither of them could say aloud. 2 days later, Daniel showed up with takeout and a surprise, an old model airplane kit. Ethan's eyes widened. "Can we build it?" Daniel nodded. "If your mom doesn't mind." Mia smiled softly. "Go ahead." They worked side by side at the table, pieces of plastic and instruction sheets scattered everywhere. Ethan concentrated so fiercely that Daniel couldn't stop smiling. When the boy reached for the glue, Daniel steadied his small hand. "Careful, little man. Slow and steady, like you?" Ethan said. Daniel laughed. "Exactly." When Mia looked up, their eyes met over the boy's head. For a heartbeat, it was as if the years had fallen away, the old closeness flickering back to life. Later, after Ethan went to bed, she lingered by the door. "You're good with him," he shrugged. "Feels natural." "It should," she said softly. They stood there in quiet, the low hum of the refrigerator filling the space between them. He wanted to reach out, to close the distance, but he didn't. Not yet. "Mia," he said finally, "I'm not going anywhere. I miss too much already." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I'm still scared. Of me, of us." The breakthrough came unexpectedly a week later. Ethan had been running a low fever all morning, but by evening he was flushed and shivering. Mia called Daniel in a panic. He arrived within minutes, helping her bundle the boy into the car and drive to urgent care. In the waiting room, she clung to Ethan's small hand, whispering reassurances. Daniel watched her, his own fear twisting tight. When the doctor finally said it was only a bad flu, not something worse, Mia broke down in quiet relief. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder, and for the first time in years, she didn't pull away. Back home, after settling Ethan in bed, she sank onto the couch, exhausted. "I hate how fast the fear comes back. One fever, and I feel like I'm losing everything again." He sat beside her. "You're not alone this time." Her eyes met his, raw and searching. "You really mean that?" "Yes." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I've spent years being angry at the wrong person. You and Ethan are my family, whether you want to admit it yet or not." She looked at him for a long time, then leaned into his shoulder, her voice a whisper. "I wanted this once. I just didn't think I'd get another chance." He closed his eyes, letting the moment settle. "Maybe we both get one now." The clock ticked quietly in the background. She didn't move, and he didn't ask her to. Days turned into a tentative peace. Daniel joined their routines. School drop-offs, grocery runs, even bedtime stories. Ethan began calling him Mr. D, then just D, without prompting. Every small moment chipped away at the years of distance, but peace always carried its shadow. One evening, as Daniel locked up the office, his phone rang. The name on the screen made his stomach tighten. Richard Holt. His father's voice was as smooth and cold as ever. "I hear you've been spending time with that woman again." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "Her name's Mia. You're making a mistake. She took advantage of you once and now she's back with a child. You really think that's coincidence?" Daniel's jaw set. "He's my son," a long pause. "Then you're a bigger fool than I thought. If she tries to use that against you, we'll make sure she doesn't keep him." The line went dead. Daniel stood in the darkened parking lot, heart pounding. The threat wasn't empty. His father had the money and connections to follow through. He knew what was coming. When he reached Mia's porch, she opened the door at the first knock. "What happened?" He didn't hesitate. "My father knows. He's coming after you." Fear flickered across her face. "He can't. He can," Daniel said grimly. "But this time I won't let him." Her breath caught. "Daniel, I'm done letting him decide what we lose." His voice was steady now, conviction hard as steel beneath it. "I'll protect you both, whatever it takes." For the first time since he'd learned the truth, she didn't argue. She just looked at him, tears bright in her eyes, the fight and hope tangled together in her expression. Outside, the street was quiet, the porch light casting a small circle of warmth around them. He reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. The storm that followed wasn't weather, it was Richard Holt. Within 48 hours, his father had lawyers drafting petitions and private investigators asking questions. Mia's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Letters arrived from firms Daniel recognized, his father's allies, each one written to intimidate. Daniel met her at her kitchen table, the same table where Ethan now built Legos, unaware of the tension thick in the air. "You're not fighting this alone," Daniel said. "I already spoke to my attorney. We'll file for paternity acknowledgement before he can touch custody." Mia's voice trembled. "He has power, Daniel. He'll make me look unfit, single mother, no financial backing, living on rent." "You know what your father can do." Daniel leaned forward. "Then he'll go through me first." Her eyes widened. "He'll destroy your career." "I'll build another one," he said flatly. "I'm done letting him decide who I get to love." She stared at him, stunned by his certainty. "You'd really give all that up? For you? For my son?" "I already did once without realizing it." Ethan looked up from the floor. "Mom, are you sad?" Mia forced a smile. "No, baby. Just tired." Daniel crouched beside the boy. "Hey, champ. How about we grab pizza later?" Ethan's face lit up. "With extra cheese?" "You got it." As the boy ran off to his room, Mia exhaled shakily. "He doesn't deserve to feel any of this." "He won't," Daniel said. "Not again." The next week became a fight for normalcy. Daniel drove Ethan to school, helped with homework, kept smiling while his phone buzzed with threats from his father's office. He started sleeping on Mia's couch some nights, saying it was to keep watch, but neither mentioned how safe it made them feel. One evening, after Ethan was asleep, Mia stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. "I can't believe it's happening again," she murmured. "I left once to keep him safe, and somehow I dragged him right back into the same war." Daniel approached slowly. "You didn't drag anyone. Your only mistake was doing it alone." She looked at him, tears filling her eyes. "You don't get it. When your father came to me that night, I was pregnant and terrified. He said you'd lose everything if I told you. I believed him. I left because I loved you." He took her hands, voice rough. "You think I'd trade my son for a title? My life's been empty since you left." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I didn't know how to come back." "Then stay now," he said quietly. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she stepped closer, until their foreheads nearly touched. "You don't know how much I've wanted to hear that." "I do," he whispered. The sound of Ethan's sleepy call broke the moment. "Mom?" She smiled faintly through tears. "Coming, sweetheart." When she returned from tucking him in, Daniel was still standing there. "He's my son," he said softly. "I want him to know that." "Tomorrow," she said, voice trembling but sure. "He deserves the truth from both of us." The next morning, they sat on the porch steps while Ethan ate cereal between them. Mia looked at him gently. "Sweetheart, we need to tell you something important." The boy blinked, spoon halfway to his mouth. "Okay," Daniel drew a breath. "You know how families come in all shapes? Well, you have a dad. It's me." Ethan stared, confused, then slowly smiled. "You mean like really?" "Really," Daniel said, throat tightening. The boy's grin spread wide. "I knew it." "Mom, he laughs like me." Mia laughed through her tears, pulling him close. "Yes, he does." Ethan reached for Daniel, wrapping his small arms around his neck. "Hi, Dad." It was the smallest word, but it hit Daniel like sunlight after years underground. He held the boy tightly, his voice breaking. "Hi, son." Mia turned away, wiping her face. When she looked back, Daniel was watching her with something fierce and unguarded in his eyes, something she'd thought she'd lost forever. Later that day, Daniel drove to his father's office. He found Richard Holt seated behind his marble desk, surrounded by the trophies of his empire. "You're not taking her to court," Daniel said. His father's tone stayed smooth. "I'm protecting you from a mistake that will ruin you." "You already did that 6 years ago," Daniel said. "You blackmailed the woman I loved. You hid my son from me." Richard's expression didn't change. "I did what was necessary." Daniel's voice hardened. "You call destroying your own family necessary?" "She was a distraction. You had a future." "I have one now," Daniel said, "and it doesn't include you." For the first time, Richard's composure cracked. "You'd throw away everything I built?" Daniel turned for the door. "Everything you built cost me the only people who ever mattered. I won't make that trade again." By the time he got home, the weight that had haunted him for years was gone. Mia opened the door before he knocked, reading the resolve on his face. "You went to see him," she said quietly. He nodded. "He's out of our lives for good." She searched his eyes. "And your firm?" "I'll start my own." A small, incredulous laugh escaped her. "You really mean it?" He stepped closer. "I mean all of it." Then his hand found hers and the air between them shifted. For the first time in 6 years, there was no wall, no silence, no guilt, only the quiet pulse of something still alive. When he kissed her, it wasn't about rekindling the past. It was about everything they'd survived to get here. It was slow, reverent, and real. When they finally parted, Mia's forehead rested against his chest. "I don't know what happens next," she said softly. "Neither do I," he replied. "But we'll face it together." Spring came early that year. The house filled with sound, Ethan's laughter, the clatter of Daniel's tools as he rebuilt the fence, Mia's humming from the kitchen. Life, quiet and ordinary, returned piece by piece. One Saturday morning, Daniel found Mia standing in the backyard, sunlight touching her hair. "You thinking about running again?" he teased gently. She turned, smiling. "Not this time." He slipped his arm around her waist. "Good, because I'm not letting you move without me again." She leaned into him, eyes soft. "Do you ever think about what we lost?" "All the time," he said. "But maybe we needed the distance to see what mattered." From the porch, Ethan shouted, "Dad! Come play!" Daniel smiled. "Be right there, buddy." Mia watched him go, her heart full in a way she hadn't thought possible. The man who had once been her heartbreak was now the anchor she'd built her life around. When he returned, scooping Ethan up onto his shoulders, she felt the ache of the past fade into something lighter, something that looked like peace. That evening, after Ethan went to bed, they sat on the porch swing, the air warm with the scent of cut grass. "You ever regret forgiving me?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "No, I regret the years we lost, but not finding our way back." She turned to him, eyes steady. "I'm sorry for what I took from you." He brushed a thumb across her cheek. "You gave me a son. You gave me another chance. That's more than I deserve." For a long moment they said nothing, just listened to the wind moving through the trees. "I used to think love was supposed to be easy," she murmured. He smiled faintly. "No, it's just supposed to be worth it." Months later, on a bright June morning, they stood together in front of a modest office sign, Holt and Reed Architecture, his new firm, built from the ground up, without his father's shadow. Mia held Ethan's hand as they looked up at it. "You did it," she said. "We did it," he almost said, but the words caught in his throat. Ethan grinned. "Can I have my own office too?" Daniel laughed. "Give it a few years." Mia reached for his hand and he took it, their fingers intertwining easily now. For the first time since they were young and reckless and in love, Daniel felt like his life was finally his own. That night, as he tucked Ethan into bed, the boy looked up sleepily. "Dad? Yeah, buddy?" "You and Mom smile more now." Daniel smiled. "We've got a lot to smile about," Ethan yawned. "You're not leaving again, right?" Daniel's voice softened. "Never." When he turned off the light, he found Mia waiting at the doorway. She whispered, "You really mean it, don't you?" He nodded. "I'm home." They stood there for a long time, listening to their son's even breathing, the house quiet and full of the life they'd fought for. Love hadn't erased the years apart. It had simply rewritten them. As they walked back to the living room hand in hand, Mia glanced up at him. "So this is our second chance?" He looked at her, eyes warm. "No, this is our first real one." And when she smiled, it wasn't the hesitant smile of the woman who once ran. It was the steady, certain one of a woman who finally believed she'd come home. If this story held you still, if you felt the ache of what was lost and the quiet relief of what was found, stay close. More second-chance love stories like this one wait for you. Each carries the same truth. Love can break, rebuild, and still come home.